Very encouraging to see how Jesus turns people's lives around, and I'm sure many more stories will come this week. She has some slides to share with us tonight, and let's begin with prayer and see what we can do tonight. Heavenly Father, thank you that we can be in your house, and thank you that we can come shoulder to shoulder with each other and learn and grow and do all those good things that you want to do us, to take us where you want us to go. Give Cherie tonight the words that you want to share with each one of us. You alone know our hearts, and you do such an amazing job putting us back together. And for that, we are so thankful. In Jesus' name, amen.
For people that were not here last night, we just talked about just how I got to this point where I'm going around teaching about addiction and recovery. And just a quick thing is I was homeless for 10 years, and so most of it was just personal experience and crazy family members. So anybody have crazy families? I'll tell you, so I got into recovery, and it was so crazy to even think I was ever going to step into recovery, because I had this whole life of just addiction, and my favorite uncle turned yellow, right? And I was like, hey, why are you so yellow? And he said, my mama was a duck. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And it was just that he was an alcoholic and his liver was failing. But as a kid, I just thought, I didn't know you could marry a duck. I didn't know that. But my family was very funny, but they were very much alcoholics. A lot of my relatives lost their lives to liver disease and that kind of thing. So I stepped in recovery, and I didn't know where to sit. I didn't know where to belong, how to belong, where I was going to fit. I didn't know how to interact. I have a chaotic attachment disorder. Does that sound like something you'd want to have? And chaotic attachment disorders is I don't attach. My mom was a kid when she had me. She didn't know how to raise kids. She didn't bond with me at all. But because they were addicts, I would try everything under the sun to try to get some kind of connection, and it didn't work, so I would try something else and try something else and try something else. So I'm socially underdeveloped. I don't know how to attach, and I was trying to step into a normal life. And I'm telling you, I just didn't fit. I just didn't fit. So I went over to this vegan vegetarian's house. She helped me do withdrawals and recovery at her house. It was amazing. And then she said, you got to find a church. I did. I found a normal church, very conservative, normal church. And I came in, and I was just like, woohoo! I just met God. I was so excited. And everybody looked at me like, you'll get over that. And I thought, wow, I hope not. I just remember thinking that I didn't know, was I supposed to be excited or not supposed to be excited? People would sit down around potluck and my palms would sweat because I didn't know how to communicate. I don't know how to. Like, what's normal conversation? And, normal conversation to an addict, I think, or to me anyway, was like, are we going to talk about the weather again? It's like, what's up with that? You know what I mean? It was like, I didn't realize that that's like the icebreaker. That's like what people, talk about the game or the weather or laundry or, and I just sat there and I just went, how about my first suicide attempt was when I was 8. I would like overshare. I would just be going like, it was just terrible. So it was crazy. Finally, someone told me that the reason you're having such a struggle is you don't know how to eat right. And I thought, is that it? First I wanted to hit him just because I thought, really? I was molested since I was 2 months old. My dad died in a crack house. It felt like it was more than that. But I thought, you know what? I had been in recovery for a while. I've seen counselor after counselor after counselor. One counselor saved my life. I sit down, and you'll appreciate this, as I sit down with them, and I was so stressed that I said, I don't think I can do this. And I was crying and ranting and walking around the room, and I said, maybe I'm schizophrenic, or maybe I'm like bipolar, maybe I'm actually so crazy I can't do this, and this is so hard, and I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I'm going to survive even this week, right? And this guy finally, after about 25 minutes, I was exhausted, so I sat down, and he said, "It looks like you're having a bad day." And I thought, a bad day? This is my life! And I wanted to just grab him by the throat. This is my life. And he said, hold up. If you don't expect times like this, you're going to set yourself up. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad weeks. You might have bad months. You might have bad years, but you're going to make it. And I looked at him like that was just I think the wisest thing I ever heard was, this is what you're going to have sometimes, and it's okay. So anyhow, I found a church. They got over me, I got over them, and I decided to do the How to Learn to Eat Right weekend. And I went to this event. There was 1,000 people at this event. It was like at a church in Sacramento, California, and it was a huge church. And the guy was taught health. Went all over the place and taught health. And please know that I am a health nut now. So don't get offended by this story. But I wasn't then. And so anyhow, so I went to the meeting, and I sat in the front row because I'm ADD, and I can't sit anywhere else. If I'm in the back row and somebody goes like that with their hair, I just think, what was that about? And I get sidetracked. I get distracted. I have to be up front. So I sat up front, and I was going to take some notes, and the guy talked about he was a triathlon athlete. I really didn't know what that was. I do now, but I didn't then. And he talked about what that was. He's gotten all kinds of medals. He was in great shape. And I thought it was interesting. Anyhow, he was in great shape, talked about all that kind of stuff. And he showed some of his awards, showed some of his achievements, and then he talked about health. And he said, one sin is no different than another. If you've had a hamburger, you might as well have gone to Mustang Ranch. Well, I know what Mustang Ranch is, right? It's a brothel in Nevada. And I just went to McDonald's, so I smelled like a hamburger. So I'm in the front row just feeling guilty as anything, and I'm thinking, I didn't want to breathe, right? And then he kept talking, and finally I got mad, and I turned around like, is anyone buying this? It's like, I just like, what is other people feeling about this? Because I was feeling like the only thing that saved my life was being ripped from me, right? And I was scared. And I thought, you know what? If a hamburger is the issue, I can't be in the building, right? Because I don't even know what he's talking about. It's so far above what I was even able to conceive. And finally, I just went, and he didn't call on me. And I had my hand up maybe 10 minutes. I don't know. I just thought, you got to call on me. And I said, if one sin is no different, how about the sin of pride? Because I think you're in trouble, And everybody got quiet. I mean, real quiet. And I thought, maybe this is a good time to leave. So I walked out. And when you walk out to a big church, you have to walk down the whole aisle. And I got to my apartment, and I was sobbing because I thought, who am I to kid myself that I would ever be saved, right? That God would ever love me, that I would ever be able to fit with a normal group that is beautiful and healthy and all that stuff. And God gave me a vision. I don't know if anybody's had a vision where you see everything but you see nothing. I don't know how God does that. Anybody? And so what was crazy about that is he showed me a time when I was 14, 15 years old. We were waiting for some heroin to come in. Everybody was out. And you're not real pleasant when you're waiting. You know what I mean? So somebody's doing a run. We're waiting for the guy to get back. He gets back, and we just slam as much drugs as we normally do, right? It was more potent than I was used to, and I died. And what he showed me is what happened next. I don't know what happened next because I was dead, right? But my friends started doing CPR and started doing all that stuff. Do you think they were certified? I just want you to imagine this scene. And so when you die, you lose bowel and bladder control, you have seizures, you throw up everywhere. My friends are like, I'm not breathing for her. I just threw up, and somebody decided to actually do it anyway and just took the vomit away from my mouth and breathed for me anyway. They put me in the shower. They put ice cubes all over the place, and I was revived, obviously. And the only thing that I thought about when I was revived is, did you take my heroin? I had more than this when I went out, right? And that's just the mentality of an addict is that I think you ripped me off, But I saw the whole thing. I smelled it, I felt it, I saw it, and I remember saying to God, why would you show me that? I didn't feel good enough because of a hamburger, and now you show me the scene. And he said, I want you to know that I loved you as much when you were laying on a drug house floor in your own feces as I do now when you're trying to be a Christian. I'm your father, and I love you. And I thought, I can't listen to anyone else. God is crazy about me. And he was crazy about me then. It wasn't then now he likes me and then he didn't. It's like he's always liked me, right? And so I had to get over that. So I started to learn a lot of things. I came in, and the church I went to showed Mission Spotlight. Has anybody ever seen that? I cried like a baby. I thought that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Everybody else was just kind of watching it, and I was just like, I want to do that. Someday I want to go and put water in China or, teach. I just want to do something, right? And so I would watch that. I would listen to children's story. That's the one thing that made a lot of sense to me. I was just praying, God, I don't know if you ever use people like me, I know we're flaky, and I know we're a mess. I have 2 brain cells. I deal with stuff all the time. And I just prayed, I want to be used. And one day the pastor calls me and says, Cherie, there's a meth addict that's out of control. Would you go and talk with them? And I thought, my sister's a meth addict. Yeah, that didn't even feel like ministry to me. It felt like homecoming, you know what I mean? So I said, yeah, and she had moved in. Her mom fell and broke her hip. Her mom's in the hospital, and she moved into her mom's house, right? And she was dealing drugs out of her mom's house and different things. And so I go over there, and the house is trashed. Yeah, nobody can trash a house more than a bunch of addicts. We really... We're just good at it. So anyhow, the house was trashed. The kids were all wanting attention. And so when I walked in, I sat on the couch at first, but they just wanted to talk about anything. And there was 4 kids. And so pretty soon I just sat on the floor. And the kids had more access. And we just talked. The mom was too far gone to really communicate well. She was just walking around the house and paranoid about a lot of stuff. And I couldn't get her attention, but I talked to the kids and realized that they didn't have blankets and a lot of things. She had duct taped most of the house off except for a couple rooms, and wasn't sure what that was about. She was chain smoking. Her youngest son was coughing his brains out, and she was spoon-feeding him Tylenol cough syrup. Thinking this kid's always sick. She said, this kid's always sick. And I said, no, little rooms and lots of smoke. But she couldn't communicate. She was just too high. And the 3rd time I went over there, her youngest daughter said that she was just raped by her mom's dealer. Casually told me that. Do you think she was lying or telling the truth? Telling the truth. She casually told me that. She told me that for one purpose, is to get attention. Because that trauma was normal for her, right? And I just thought, man, I wanted to grab this woman by the throat and just say, you got to listen to me. You have to listen to me. But, I think that I'm an evangelist now. I can't do that. So I just can't do that. So I said to her, hey, what's the duct tape about? And she said, that duct tape? What's that about? What is this duct tape about? Let me tell you what that's about. Is demons are trying to get in. And I thought, and duct tape works? I'm getting me some. And she was so serious. And I wanted to bust up. How many people think duct tape is for everything? Did you ever consider demons? I never had, right? So I wanted to bust up, but it would be inappropriate. But it got us connected. The next few days got her into treatment. The church raised funds, got all their kids into school. And it was incredible to watch what happened. But that was my first step towards doing anything. But I was on the floor one day with her, filthy. My pants were filthy getting up from the floor because the house was filthy. And I heard God say, Cherie, this is your ministry. And I thought, shut up. I have not seen this on Mission Spotlight. I'm not doing it. Because addicts will lie to you, they'll steal from you, they'll all that kind of stuff because it's what happens to us, right? I didn't realize I just get better insurance and I can just upgrade every time. But anyhow, so I thought I don't want to do it. What about those nice Mr. Spotlight things, like going to another country and teaching English or doing Bible studies? And no, you're going to work with addicts. And I pouted for, I would love to say a couple days, but I pouted for months. Like, no. And then I realized that it's genius. I feel more comfortable with somebody that's doing recovery than anyone else. I just feel comfortable. Their journey, whether they're in one place or another at any given time is no big deal to me, and their journey is something I love. So I started getting into ministry. And it was so cool. We went, I think I've seen every country. I mean, how crazy is that? I was standing in Moscow one time, and I'm standing in Red Square, and I'm working with heroin addicts. There's a lot of heroin in the youth in Russia. And I'm standing there, and I'm looking at these onion dome churches, and I'm thinking, this is crazy, right? Crazy. And God says, do you remember when you were living in Southgate, California, and you were living in a car? I got out at about 2:30, 3:30 in the morning one morning, and I looked down the street, and I was 14 years old, 15 years old, and I thought, is this going to be my life? And he said, I knew then you would be standing here today. Trust me, I know where you're going to be. And I just was overwhelmed by that. And so every part of my journey was just incredible. I started working at a place called Heroin Town in Willimantic, Connecticut. And some evangelists. Did anybody know Randy Maxwell? I love him. I just love him. We raised our kids together and stuff, but he does prayer evangelism. And Randy was in Willimantic, and 60 Minutes just did a thing called Heroin Town. And Randy was there doing prayer stuff, and he talked about Colombia and said there was some cartels in Colombia, and the whole town was overrun by cartels and drugs, and they prayed about it, and this happened. And somebody from the audience raised their hand, and they said, I don't care about Colombia. What about our city? And so he said, it just hit him. Like, what about our city? What are we doing here? Like, don't tell us stories about somewhere else. And so he met with a group before he left, and then he was going to come back and talk to me because I'm a heroin addict in recovery. And so we ended up coincidentally coming back to the airport at the same time. I was coming from one place, he was coming from another place. I'm at the luggage, what do you call it? Yeah? And you get a book? No. I'm at the luggage terminal, and he's at another one. And he hollers across the airport, hey, Cherie, aren't you a heroin addict? Everybody kind of grabbed their luggage. I was like, not anymore. What is wrong with you, And so I realized we came up, he talked about the town. I wrote a book called Miracle from the Street, and he did the intro into the book. And so he said, you know what? I told them that we're going to start doing ministry here. And I said, well, we got to educate people because most people don't know how to respectfully talk to someone in recovery. It's really tough when they know that you're not seeing them, that you're talking down to them, and you really are not inviting them to be a friend. You're just trying to do a Bible study. They know all that. So we have to just do this kind of education first. So we got 3 or 4 churches involved. Every 3 months we went, and I went with Randy Maxwell, myself, Michael Harris. Does anybody know him? Addict in recovery, was a mess. I think he got in an accident one time driving high. His wife got thrown out of the car, and she's paralyzed for the rest of her life. I mean, really serious stuff, but now he's a vocalist, so and he's in recovery, so we asked him to join us. We asked another guy to join us that was a crack dealer in Canada, and at camp meeting, the kids go to the park and they witness 2 crack addicts. What is wrong with you guys? I thought that's the funniest thing in the world to me. So they took their guitar and they sang Kumbaya in the park. And Monty was trying to deal crack, and these kids from the camp meeting was really messing with business, right? And so he said, you know, you're messing with my business. And they said, one girl was a little shaky, but she was right there. She took the classes, and she said, I just want you to know Jesus. And he said, good. Can I just say I know Jesus, and you can leave now? No. Who are you? And so she's wanting to play guitar and sing him a few songs, and he's like, get out of here. What is wrong with you? And so finally he says, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. And she's like, what? You're a what? My mom is probably at the camp meeting that you came from. She thinks I'm dead. And the girl started crying. Your mom thinks you're dead? Yeah. Can I tell her you're alive? I don't care. Just go. Just go. And so she says, okay, but can I have your phone number? So if your mom wants to say something that I can call you? And he gives her the phone number. It's crazy to me. So she calls him and says, your mom cried. She's so glad that you're not dead, you know? And she called him every Sabbath for a year, just checking on him every Sabbath. And the next year, he was at camp meeting. He saw signs saying that they were doing scholarships at Andrews University. And he decided to do recovery, try to get the scholarship. He went to Andrews, and he is now a pastor for the Adventist Church. And so we called him, and we said, Monty, would you come with us to Willimantic, Connecticut? And so we go, this whole group, some in recovery and some just normies. And so we get to Willimantic, and it's so crazy. When 60 Minutes calls a town heroin town, it's because it is at the highest trafficked place for heroin in the United States, right? And they have a hotel on Main Street. You're not going to believe me, but you can Google it. It's called Hooker Hotel. Who do you think lives there? And I thought, are you kidding me? Hooker Hotel. Somebody said it's not what you think, Cherie. The guy that discovered the town was J.R. Hooker. And I thought, I don't care what his name was. You got to change the name of that. And so we started doing educational stuff. We started going every 3 months, educating the churches. And then one time I go there, and they're going to do Christmas caroling down the main street for the businesses. And they bless all the businesses, right? And so they're going to sing and bless the business. And I said, are you going to sing for Hooker Hotel? And they said, no. We can't bless them. And I thought, you're going to sing for all the businesses, and we're doing an outreach for the addicts, and you're not going to bless them? Bless them in their recovery. Bless them in their journey out of all of that, but you can't miss them. And they said, but you haven't seen this hotel. It's filthy. And I said, then clean it. And I got back on the plane and flew home and came back 3 months later. What had happened in the meantime is they cleaned, with a sprayer, the whole outside of the hotel. They painted the windows and Christmas decorations. They cleaned the lobby of this hotel. They put a Christmas tree in. They put presents under the tree. And you had addicts sitting on the stairway just in tears because they haven't been a part of a Christmas celebration for a long time. 2 older women, it was funny. well, it's funny now that I'm older that I say that, but two older women prayed and did prayer walks around the hotel. And one woman said, she went up to the bench where people just took breaks, and she said, God, bless any Fanny that sits here today. And I thought, you guys are the best. So anyhow, the mayor wanted to know what was happening. Why is this hotel being cleaned up? Why are these addicts responding this way? What's happening? Who's doing this? And they gave us $50,000. I mean, it was just crazy. And so anyhow, at the meantime, because we're talking about recovery, at the meantime, I have to do an annual checkup because I'm normal now and I do annual checkups, right? So I went into the doctor. He did blood work and all that stuff. And he calls me back in, and he has tears in his eyes. My doctor's Christian, and he knows me, and he said, Cherie, you have hepatitis A, B, and C. What's that about? And I didn't want to tell him. I used to stay in hotels that cost $4 a night. I would find needles in trash cans. I would take sandpaper and sand the needle so it's sharp enough to use. If I have anything, I came by it honestly, you know. And so I wasn't depressed. I wasn't angry. But I thought 30-something years into my recovery, I get this diagnosis. What's up with that? And I literally felt like, you know, let me Google it and find out, you know, what's it feel like to die of liver cancers and all that kind of stuff. Like, so I was thinking about that, but I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel depressed. I just kind of accepted it until he said, I'd like to test your husband. I thought, what? My husband was a Boy Scout till he was 18 years old, almost an Eagle Scout. His dad's an ambassador for the United States. His mom's a violinist in an orchestra. The only thing he's ever done is love me, and he's going to die for that? And I got so depressed, like there's no way, what is up? And they said, I'd also like to test your child. No way. My child did nothing, right? And so then I'm angry and I'm depressed, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And the people in Willimantic, I went back to Willimantic, again, they're doing all kinds of, what are we going to do for treatment and all that kind of stuff. But I go back to Willimantic, and one of the churches finds out that I have the hepatitis A, B, and C. And I don't know about your church, but some churches, if they say, can we pray for you? It'd be a couple minutes. You know what I mean? A couple minutes. No. But some churches, they don't stop. It could be a couple days. And I knew that one of the churches were there. I didn't even let my friends pray for me. My husband got tested. My daughter got tested. They both came back negative. I almost moved out of the house. They don't have it. And I thought, I don't want them to get it, so maybe I'll just move out. Both my daughter and husband said, that's crazy. Yeah, we love you. You got to stay here. But when I would have friends that say, can I pray for you? I would always feel the same. No, I'm good. But I do have someone I want you to pray for. But I always kind of pushed it away, and I really didn't want prayer. And I couldn't understand why. I couldn't give you an easy answer on why. But when I went to Willimantic, the 3 churches that were involved on that particular trip, one church said, can I pray for you? And I said, no, I'm good, but let's pray for this outreach this week. No, we're praying for you. And I said, no, I'm good. I don't know if you heard me. It's like, I'm good. No, we're praying for you. And I remember finally, like a spoiled child, I remember just stomping up, like, okay, let's just do this then. The whole time, I'm arguing with God. I didn't ask for this. Raise your hand if you want to be healed. Like I didn't. I know, I did not. And I knew I did not, but I couldn't tell you why, right? And so they prayed and prayed and prayed, and I'm thinking, oh man, let's just get over this and get back on to doing what we came here to do. And they're still praying. And one woman, I think she was just so insightful. She said, Cherie, if you don't want prayer for healing, what do you want prayer for? And I said, I've never belonged in my life. anywhere. I want prayer for that. And so she started praying for that sense of belonging. And when she started praying, I felt healing from my toes all the way to the top of my head, totally. And don't say amen, because I'd have to hit you in the face, because I didn't want healing. You know, you remember that? Like, I did not want it. And I felt it, and I didn't want to say out loud that I think I'm healed, because I thought somebody's going to say amen. And I'm so angry about it. I was so angry. I left there, went back to my doctor, and I said, I need to be retested. And he said, why? And I said, I think I'm healed. And he looked at me real pathetic, and he said, you don't get healed from this. And I said, tell God that, because I'm not happy about it myself. You know, just tell God that. And so he retests me, and he didn't do it right away, because your insurance doesn't like to pay for tests that's already been done, you know, all that kind of stuff. So anyhow, so he retests me, and I have nothing, right? Don't nod your head or say amen. It's not a safe time. So I'm so angry now. I'm angry at God. I don't think this is fair. And months go by, and finally I say to God, I know this is crazy, but I am spinning. I'm so angry. And he said to me, Cherie, you have wanted to die every day of your life. Every day. I drank stuff from under the sink when I was 3 years old. I jumped off house when I was 8 years old. I've done suicide attempts in every single way you could think of. And he said, every day you've wanted to die. I'm asking you to choose to live. And I just started weeping. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to be here. And I don't want to sound like any weird about it, but this place it's just not as good as I thought it was going to be. I have couches and 2 cars, and I have a house. I have a computer. I have all that stuff that I thought I needed. I'm not homeless. I work every day. I'm done. I'm done holding molested kids. I'm done with all that. I don't mind. I'm not going to kill myself, but man, if you take me out any other way, amen. And he said, no, I'd like you to choose to live. I could not. I remember crying. I remember feeling sad and depressed. And finally, I heard a pastor say, a day is like 1,000 years to God. Has anybody ever heard that? And so I thought, if a day is 1,000 years, and I live 70, 80 years, how long am I actually living? Has anybody calculated that out? We're actually here for 2.5 hours, about. And so what God said is, can you live, however your life is going to be, for 2.5 hours, spiritually? I thought, okay, yeah, I think I can. And so it was a whole mind shift. It was a whole thing like, what God was asking me is, don't take yourself out. Don't think about taking yourself out. Actually choose to live. And that was the hardest thing in recovery I've ever done. I could stop heroin, I could do a lot of things, but choosing to just live was really tough. And the first part of recovery is that choice to even be here. Raise your hand if that makes any sense to you. So for a lot of us, that's the first choice. Once we make that, the other choices are easy. And do you see this, let me see if I can find, do you see this old cathedral or church? It is, I think, at one time was beautiful. Has anybody ever restored a building? So when you restore a building, do I just take some paint in there and paint it? Right? What do I have to do? You have to totally take it apart. So when we come for recovery, we come looking like a masterpiece that has been trashed, right? And God says, I can help restore that. But this is not going to be easy, because even the foundation is rotted, right? You can't open and close windows. The wood around the windows are rotted. You have to rebuild stuff. You have to literally take everything out, scrape things off, all of that kind of stuff. And so there's no way to walk into this building and just do a little paint. But restoration and recovery is possible. And so that's one thing that I learned in the first part of my recovery, is that for one, I had to choose to live. A really famous guy, I'm blocking on his name right now, but famous recovery guy said that when we step into recovery of anything, because I never talk about addiction as far as drugs and alcohol. I wish that heroin was my only problem. Because somebody said, you know what, when you stop heroin, you're going to be good. When I stopped heroin, I was crazy, right? I had all of this stuff, that I didn't deal with and I hadn't dealt with and all that now I have to look at. So when you first start recovery, whether it's workaholism, whether it's religious addiction, whether it's spending, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's sexual addiction, the first thing you have to do is stop, whatever it is. And that's like buying a ticket to a movie, right? Is the ticket the movie? What does the ticket do? It gets you into the building, but it's not the movie, right? So when you get a ticket, when you do abstinence, it gets you into your life, but it's not your life, right? It just gets you into your life. And so you can't go into your life and do recovery when you're still dragging around a bunch of addictions. It's just almost I think it is impossible. But so that you have abstinence is a first step. It's like buying a ticket to a movie. And then the rest of it is the restoration process. And you literally have to go. Has anybody ever heard of stinking thinking that addicts do? It's like that crazy thinking. We don't trust anybody. I had trust issues that were off the chart. When God finally got me to choose life, he said, I had 20 years of recovery. 21 years, actually, of recovery at that time. And he said, now, are you ready to start the work of recovery? And I thought, what do you mean? I have 21 years. I've been clean for 21 years. Who would be crazy enough to say, are you ready to start? And for 21 years, I picked all the direction. I worked on heroin. I worked on anger. I worked on depression. I didn't ever ask God, what do you think we should work on today? What God said is, now I want you to work on trust. I thought, no way. I don't trust anybody. If I have to do something, I'll just do it. If I let you do something, it's only because it doesn't matter that much to me. But I don't trust anyone. I want you to learn to be loved. Let someone love you and love them. I don't know how to do that. And I remember just having a sense of being locked in my own little room, and every time God tried to take any bricks away to get me out of there, I would shake so badly that he would back off. And I would pray, please get me out of here. And he would try to take one brick out, and I couldn't handle it because I didn't know how to let anyone in, not even God. And so 21 years in my recovery, he said, let's work on that. Well, you can't get a book for that, Like I can get a book on dealing with depression. I can get a book on dealing with anger, steps to recovery, but I can't get a book on how to love, how to be loved, which is a bigger deal, and how to trust. And I remember saying, I don't know how to do it. God, I don't know how to do it. And for most addicts, I'll talk for myself, but for the people I know and myself, is we won't tell you we don't know how. Because we'll just play it off. We'll try to figure it out. But I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know how to do that. And I remember just feeling so defeated, like, God, I don't know how. And he said, well, then you won't get in my way. I said, okay. And so I had to learn. That was the first thing. Choosing to live, choosing to let God teach me how to trust and how to love. The first thing he did, because he said, just do a hobby. Like you're doing, is that knitting or crocheting? Okay, so he said, just do a hobby. And I thought, I've always wanted to sew. So I bought a sewing machine. And do you know that if you buy a sewing machine, you don't know how to sew yet? Who would have guessed it? So I have this sewing machine. So I told my church, you know what, I'd really like to learn to sew, and I bought a sewing machine. No one said, well, let me teach you. But what I was thinking is that I would buy a sewing machine and I would learn how to interact with someone by learning to sew. That sewing machine stayed in the box for 17 years, right? I still don't know how to sew. I got in front of the church one time and I said, I need a sponsor, like a spiritual sponsor. And no hands went up. And I didn't know at the time that people were intimidated by me. Like, who would sponsor you? And I'm thinking, a sponsor. A sponsor would sponsor me. But I just didn't know how to connect, and I didn't know what to do. So finally God said to take a knitting class and just watch people work and watch people interact with each other and don't talk much. And so I just went to Michael's, it's a craft store, took a knitting class and started to watch people. I watched people at church, I watched people at this knitting class, I took art classes, I took art classes and I got really good at them. I actually ended up as an art therapist for a while. I mean, I really got good at it. The women's ministry leader even said, would you do our brochure? And I thought, really? I was like, no way. I'm in ministry and I'm going to do the women's ministry brochure. I said, yes. Where's it going to be? Because you have to know where it's going to be to actually do the brochure right. Well, it's going to be in the mountains, in Idaho, in McCall. I thought, cool. So a good friend of mine is Lars Justinen. I don't know if anybody knows him, but he's an artist. I used to watch his kids so I could watch his artists at his studio. But anyhow, so I got all kinds of different magazines with mountains in them. And I looked at all the different ones I liked, and I did this brochure with mountains, and it was beautiful. I'm serious. You would have just said, this is beautiful. And I thought, it's beautiful. I turned it in. Everybody's so quiet, so quiet. And I thought, something is wrong. In recovery, we know those things. So something is wrong. I'm trying to figure out what it was. And somebody said, did we tell you McCall? And I said, yes. And why did you put Mount Fuji on here? And I thought, what do you mean Mount Fuji? That's just a mountain in a magazine. Had a little cherry tree on it. I didn't go to school. I don't know that's Mount Fuji. And so I had to learn a lot of things. So in my recovery, I had to learn a lot of things. And every step was learning something. It was learning to be rejected and not fall apart. Not want to go use, not think I'm never going to make it. Learning to stumble around, to be good at something at one point and not so good at something the next point. Doing something stupid like putting Mount Fuji on a women's retreat poster that's supposed to be in McCall, Idaho. It was just a crazy thing to take every step. And one of the things that I learned about recovery is the thing that is really hard and really amazing is giving up on being perfect and begin the work of becoming yourself. You don't have to be someone else. When I first came into the church, what was really popular was these paisley dresses with lace collars. Anybody remember those? They were horrible. The whole time. It just itched. Does anybody have one of those? I got one in every color because I wanted to fit in. I thought, I couldn't believe it. I was constantly just saying, this is horrible. Who would wear this, right? And I would hold my Bible like everyone, and I would try to sit like everyone, and I would try to be like everyone. I would try to like the same foods. And I didn't like brown rice. I thought, I'm going to hell. It was a really tough thing. And when finally I said to God, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do it. I can't right, I can't be right, I can't speak right, and I'm just going to be myself. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, good, because I missed you. And so we think God is looking for us to be like everyone else. He's like, no, I'm looking for you to figure out who you are. Let me show you. You are amazing. You're amazing. You've been lied to your whole life. You've been trashed your whole life. And I just want to unfold that for you. I want you to trust me enough to where you will let me show you who you are. And that was my first part of recovery. With This is another saying I love. A deep sense of love and belonging is an irreducible need of all people. Of all people. We are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to be loved, to love and to be loved, to belong. When those needs are not met, we don't function as we were meant to. We break, we fall apart, we numb, we ache, we hurt others, and we get sick. So biologically, it's how we were created. If I can't get that need met, everything else falls apart. And if I'm in relationships that don't get those needs met, if I'm doing drugs that don't get these needs met, if I'm being raised by people that don't know how to meet those needs, I will be sick. The only way in recovery that I am going to be able to do recovery at all is to step into my own skin first, choose to live first, realize that trust and love is a big deal, and that when I feel safe, I actually will start healing, and I will be less hurtful to the people around me. When I stopped heroin, what was really crazy to me, does anybody know what codependency is? I stopped using drugs and realized that I was incredibly codependent, right? And had just patterns of behavior that were just ridiculous. But I would try to be whatever you wanted me to be, so you would be happy, therefore I would be happy, right? And if you didn't like this, I would change to this. And if you didn't like this, I would change to this. And if you didn't like this, I would change to this. And so because of the chaotic attachment disorder, I could do that on a dime, right? But I never figured out who I am, so I never healed. We do not heal in those patterns. We cannot heal in those patterns. I never figured out who I am. When I finally figured out who I was, I thought, no way. And can I tell you, people think this is crazy. God gave me a vision, and that's where you see something but you don't see anything. I don't know how he does that. But he gave me a vision, and it was myself as a 3-year-old just running around. And I thought, what a cutie. I didn't even think I was cute. I thought I was really trampy looking because I'd been molested so much. So, but I was a little cutie, 3 years old. I was trying to get someone's attention. My dad was high. My mom was buried in a book. The house was dark, and I just wanted someone to see me, right? So I'm dancing and moving around. But I just see this kid in this vision. And I said to God, I didn't know I was so cute and so normal. And he said, you were normal. You were raised in a damaging, traumatic home. But you were okay. In our household, if you weren't sick, there was something wrong with you. If you didn't have drama, there was something wrong with you. And so we knew we actually had to be sick to fit into this home. What God said is you weren't. You were just a normal kid. And if you trust me, I will show you how to get there again. And so for somebody, if you hear me, you've got a lot of layers to take off. But in the inside of all that, you're going to find one day that you'll look at yourself and say, hey, you're not so bad. And it's not a conceited hey. It's just where you're in your own skin and it feels good. You like yourself. I'm not overly conceited. I don't like myself or think I'm better than anyone else, but I don't think I'm worse than anyone else. I actually can smile at stuff. I can be happy and present in situations. I don't have to escape from my own life anymore. And there's something in recovery that's really incredible about that. We are, on this one, I don't want to go into this yet, so I'll go into that tomorrow. So what's really crazy about that first part of the journey is there's a lot of work in the decision to be yourself. Does anybody raise your hand if you're a spendaholic, if you like to spend? When you get depressed or feeling down, you go buy something. Some people have like 2 or 3 of the same shirt because they forget, I've already bought that. It still has a price tag on it. It's just that we feel better. I realized that if I have ice cream in my freezer, I can get through anything. As soon as I start to feel bad, I think, there's ice cream in the freezer. And I just get the spoon. I don't even get a bowl. Who cares about that? So that like eating or doing any of my addictions, falling back on those. So I had to learn that in my recovery, I had to learn all those triggers. What triggers me to want to use? Somebody comes in, please don't think I'm crazy, but raise your hand if this is you at all, ever. But I could walk into a room, and if one person didn't like me in the room, I would try to get them to like me, right? 90 people could say, you know what, I'm glad you're here. Oh, wait, I'm going to talk to this one person, right? Because for some reason, that wounded kid in me would have to try to make that right? I married a narcissist. Does anybody realize how hard that is? And I just, because I wanted to fix it and make it better and all that kind of stuff. And so if I can't figure out who I am, I'm going to constantly be trying to manipulate the environment around me. And that's what most of us do over and over and over. And so there's a decision that has to be made. Along with recovery is the decision eventually has to be, are you willing to look at who you are, actually who you are, and allow people to show you that, allow God himself to show you that. We're done at 7:30 or 8. Okay, I'm going to have to go on to this next part. All right. Does anybody have questions so far? Do what?
Mount Fuji is the most beautiful mountain in the entire world.
I know.
It is.
Did you hear that? Of course I would pick Mount Fuji. It's a beautiful mountain. Yeah. You should have seen mine. My sketch was good. Everybody just was so silent. Like, what's this? Mount Fuji. Anyhow, any other question or comments? Does it make sense about choosing life first? Does anybody have to do that? So that I don't want, even though we're going to go on to look at some of the addiction realities, is that I don't want you to forget that. Any addiction that we have, any time that we disconnect from our own self, we are changing ourselves in so many ways it's ridiculous. We're changing ourselves neurochemically. I didn't know that. When I first saw the changes that happened to somebody in trauma, I was like, that's crazy. Why doesn't somebody tell us that? Your brain is different when you're traumatized. I'm thinking, well, I could have said duh, but I didn't really realize that they could see it. So recent developments in neurology and radiology and genetics have a clear picture of how addiction takes hold of the human brain and actually changes it. Literally, they can see it. They can see how damaged we are. We also have solid scientific evidence that working a friendship program, a 12-step program, literally rewires the brain for recovery. Today, CT scans, MRIs, and other high-tech tools are able to look deep in the brain and monitor biochemistry of perception, emotion, sanity, sickness, compulsion, addiction, healing, and recovery. They can see that on scans. And I don't know about you, but I got angry about that. I thought, what do you mean? Like, what are you saying exactly? That when you think crazy thoughts, your brain changes. When you get lost in addictions, your brain changes. When you are traumatized, your brain changes. And I thought, well, so what happens next, right? Because if I break my arm, I can put myself in a cast, and 6 weeks later, I'm doing better. Is your brain the same, right? And that's what I was curious about. This is a picture of my brain. I love this picture. I wish that was my brain. So your brain has all this stuff going on. And when you are lost in trauma, there's whole sections of your brain that shut off, that literally shut off. There's a guy that does research on pleasure centers and addiction. And so when you get lost in addictions, your pleasure centers start firing like crazy. Who knows if that's true? So your pleasure center starts firing. You start looking for that addiction and you want that dopamine rush and all that stuff. And pretty soon your brain is exhausted by that overstimulation and starts to pull back receptors that take those neurochemicals that increase pleasure, right? And everything kind of flatlines and comes to a halt, and your brain actually starts to shut itself off. And you end up with what's called an anhedonistic disorder. Anybody know what that is? Does anybody know what hedonism is? It's a seeker after pleasure. So anhedonism means I can't find pleasure anymore, right? And so like I keep chasing the same thing and you can't find it. And I'm not going to go into the whole neurochemistry about this, but I think it's fascinating that your brain says, okay, this got me pleasure the last time, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was the step before that that got me pleasure. So your brain takes it back a step, and so it's not the drug anymore. Like Pavlov's dog, you know that experiment? Right? The bell rings and the dog salivates, right? They got the dog to salivate when the bell rang, not when they got the food, right? Because the dog didn't get rewarded in the same way after eating the food time and time again. Like a drug addict doesn't get the same high after getting the heroin again and again. So we think, well, maybe it's the step before that. So the dog started salivating with the bell, and then started salivating with the door opening. And then, so it's like our brain starts to figure out how I got the high and when do I actually get rewarded. And so your brain has a pattern that it sets up, and every part of the pattern starts to give you the same high. Like when I'm on the couch and I start to get depressed and I say there's ice cream in the fridge, when do I start feeling better? As soon as I think that, right? A sex addict that's going to go act out, when do they start feeling better? As soon as they decide to go act out. An alcoholic that's going to go down and get a drink, when do they feel better? As soon as they think about getting a drink, because those patterns in your brain start developing. Addiction changes the brain, laying down neural pathways and networks that chemically encourage us to repeat harmful and compulsive behaviors. So my brain actually knows what is going to make me happy. And I can look at Disneyland over here or a needle over here, and I'm going to walk this way as an addict, right? And walk away from Disneyland, right? So my brain has set up what it thinks is going to make me happy, and nothing else will work for an addict, because that's what we've learned. Relationships, I don't know if anybody's had crazy relationships, but I was 10 years on the street, so crazy relationships worked for me. Normal people were boring to me. I couldn't connect. I didn't know how to do the relationship with them. It took me a long time to realize that normal might be healthier, but it was a long time because my compulsive behaviors took me in another direction. All addictions, even if they don't involve alcohol and drugs, create the same effects in the same center of the brain. So that flatlining of those pleasure centers happen in every addiction. Raise your hand if you are a religious addict or you know a religious addict. Religious addictions change your brain, just like any other addiction. And that's an addiction, a religious person that has taken religion to an addictive place, right? And they do the same behaviors, they teach the same thing as any dysfunctional home or any dysfunctional addict, but they just do it with religion, and their brain changes in the same way. So any addiction will take you there. Workaholism, the same. Gambling, the same. For a gambler, as soon as they start to realize the football game's coming on and they've got bets going on, they'll start firing off those neurochemicals. If they're a gamer, if they're not playing the game, they get depressed or bored, and hedonism means you're bored, not necessarily depressed. And so the brain does the same thing with every addiction. Isn't that the cutest picture? So I want you just to imagine the first time you tasted chocolate when you were little, or candy, especially a vegan. What do you think you thought? Woohoo! What was that? And who do you think gave it to you? Grandma? Yeah? So The next time you see grandma, what are you looking for? Candy or chocolate. You're looking at her purse. And so even in a kid's brain, when you start setting those things off, I'm not saying that don't give your kids chocolate, but I'm just saying that once you set that off, is the next time they see you, they don't think, oh my goodness, you're here, I love you. Did you bring some candy? Did you bring some chocolate? Because you train them to actually look at that. Addictions are interactive. One addiction triggers another one. There's different types of highs that you can have. And the different types of highs, there's an arousal high that I like to be aroused or in your face, like a meth addict. I'm going to be like, I don't want to disappear. I don't want you not to see me. What do you mean you're not paying attention to me? I'll grab you. I'll do meth. I'll do gambling. I'll do anything that actually gives me a sense of power. And for a lot of those addicts, at one point in their life, they felt somewhat powerless. And they'll do anything that gives them that sense of having the power. They'll switch addictions. Somebody will say, we're going to test you for meth, and so they'll go to gambling. We're going to test you for that. They'll go to sexual addictions or relationship. We're going to test you, so you can switch addictions, but you stay in the same category of highs. There's a satiation high or saturation high, which is heroin, Valium, opiates, and that kind of addict likes to just disappear. Like, I remember just wanting to nod off for like 10 hours, and I could just nod off, and I don't want to be seen. Being seen to me means being hurt, right? So I would do something that just allowed me to escape. And so that is Valium, television, heroin, novels. I mean, it's whatever. It's like getting away from that. And the other high is fantasy highs, where an arousal addict wants to be seen. You are going to pay attention to me. Saturation addict wants to kind of disappear. And a fantasy high means I don't want to be. I'll put mask on after mask on after mask on, and I don't want to be myself. I don't want to be in my own skin. So there's different highs that happen, but we stay within our own category usually. Trauma, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional, changes the brain chemistry, predisposing the addict to compulsions. So not only am I attracted to addictions with trauma, is my brain chemistry has changed so that I'm going to lean towards addiction. And so when somebody is in recovery, the reason recovery is so important, that all of this gets changed, right? And I can't just say, you know what, I'm going to not use. That's it. Because my brain health, my brain chemistry has been changed. I really need that time in recovery. Talking and self-help therapies are effective. Definitely friendship programs, 12-step programs, laughing with someone, connecting with someone. That right now, all the research says, is the best way for healing. And not with another addict. You really are going to be connecting with somebody else that's in recovery, someone else that's along the same journey, someone else that is not going to be doing some hurtful things. And in the meantime, your brain has time to heal. How long do you think the brain takes to heal? My arm, when I got bucked off my horse, was 6 weeks. If I took the cast off in 3 days, what do you think would have happened? I'd have been trashed. My arm would have still broke. I would have rebroke it, right? Or not allowed it to heal. The brain takes 15 months to start firing all those chemicals. So you'll start firing stuff in the meantime, but they can actually watch the brain start to heal. In about 15 months, you get all your neurochemistry back on par again. You're in your frontal lobes. You feel joy again. What a nice concept. So you literally start to feel all those things again, but your brain actually takes a while to heal. The process appears to build and deepen new pathways, which creates new patterns of thinking and acting. When somebody says, I have no self-control, they don't. The brain is changed. Our addictions and our fear and our anger and our behaviors change the brain. So I'm not in my frontal lobe and I don't have the self-control. So when somebody is actually trying to change your life, give them a break. Give them a little time. genetics actually has deepened our understanding about addiction and recovery. If you're a child of an alcoholic, for example, you are predisposed to addiction, right? If you're a child of an addict, there's my dopamine DNA strands are shorter than other people's. Doesn't mean I have to be an addict, but it means that I have to pay attention. I have to do things that will give me that dopamine that are not damaging or addicting. And I can do that. Like I ski, I play golf, I have horses, I have an equine therapy center at my house. I mean, I do those kind of things because I know that dopamine, I can't ignore that, else I'll try to kick it up in unhealthy ways. So know that if you are from a family of addicts, that your DNA is different. And be thankful, because on the other side of recovery, you may have a better life because of that. You've done a lot of work. You're going to be in touch with your creativity, and you're going to be in touch with who you are. And so I wouldn't feel bad about being different, but know that you are different. Recent science has taught that every cell of your brain is damaged with addictions, any kind of addictions, but every cell of your brain has a potential to heal. Every cell. It's how we were made. And so what's incredible to me is when somebody says, with everything that you've gone through, you should be a basket case. Well, I was. But every cell of your brain, every part of your process, every part of who you are, the healing is incredible. I did art for healing. I did right brain stuff. I did music and art. I got myself a piano, took some lessons, that kind of thing. But I did that kind of stuff because I had to really start to look at who I am and how do you heal. And I found out that it takes time. You're going to fail a lot. But every cell, unless you're really trashed, I mean, you got holes in your brain. And still, even with that, have you ever seen like a canyon where water's coming down a canyon and you get dammed up someplace and the water just goes around and kind of meets back up again? Same thing happens with even some of our brain damages, and when we really are damaged, is that we literally will bring in healing anyway. Has anybody ever looked at a rat study? And they put a rat in a cage, put a lever, and you push the lever, and you push the lever over and over and over, the rat does, until it dies. Like, you put the lever, gives them drugs, one lever gives them food. And they'll push the drugs lever until they're dead and not go for the food, you know? And they've done that to thousands and thousands of rats. I wish they would have just called me, gave me the money. I'd have said, you know what, he's going to push that lever, you know? And because he gets those dopamine rushes. Dopamine's a powerful drug, right? And so they did that drug with, they did that study with rats for years and years and years, went through a lot of rats. And then they thought, oh, wait, I wonder what would happen to a drug-addicted rat if we dropped them in a cage with a bunch of sexualized female rats. What do you think would happen? I wonder if they would change addictions. They should have gave me that money. I would have said, absolutely, right? So they did that over and over and over, and the rat went from a drug addict to a sex addict, right? And they did that over and over and over. So they found out that addiction is powerful, and we change addictions over and over. Finally, one guy said, I wonder what would happen if we took that same rat and dropped it into just a healthy group of rats, like a rat utopia. Spinning things to run on and little grass in there, and not grass like you think, not like weed, but actual grass. And they were just healthy, had a lot of friends, a lot of space, a lot of good food, good water, still had the lever with the drug. And what they found out is very seldom did any rat push the lever. And so what heals us is community. What helps us in recovery is connecting with each other. Our brain will not be fooled and will not heal until it feels safe. So if you are playing me and saying this is a safe place, but it's not, my brain says, I'll stay here and play the game with you, but I'm not going to heal. As soon as I actually feel safe, the brain starts healing, and they can see it on scans. It's not something they're guessing anymore. It's that when we are in healthier environments, we actually heal. When you connect with me and we laugh together and we are friends, you feel better. I feel better. We walk out healthier. And so that's with anybody and any addiction. So if you're going to help anybody, or if you're going to go and recover yourself, you have to look for those real connections. And if you don't have them, you won't heal. There's no reason to, I don't think. So anyhow, so what the studies are showing now, and they're doing them over and over and over again, no rat dies. No rat is strung out. But they literally are doing rat utopias kind of thing. This is, out of all the rats that were killed in all those experiments, this was the craziest rat picture I could find. So they really protect those pictures. Safety in the brain is one of the most important recent findings, is that safety is an essential prerequisite for healing the brain and creating successful recovery. It is so important. Only when the brain feels safe can it optimally restructure itself, reconstruct itself. It needs to know that it is being understood, right? It needs to know that someone sees me, that this is not a play, this person's not playing me. As soon as that happens, the brain literally starts to get better. And you can't fake that. You can't pretend that. And so anytime that you're looking at recovery, make sure that it's real. Make sure the people around you are real. Make sure that you are real if you're reaching out to someone. Because if you're not, you've actually created more harm. When I first came into recovery, I wondered, does anybody actually like me? You know, I was a homeless heroin addict, illiterate. Do I fit anywhere? And so it was weird trying to do recovery with that sense. So it's really important working with addicts or being an addict and doing recovery is to find those groups that you can fit in. This is some of my friends. And they're so funny. They just are funny. But it's like when you get that sense of belonging and friendship and it just is everything. When you learn how to connect, when you learn how to be part of a group, when you trust the group, when you open up. Raise your hand if you typically don't open up to anyone. There's a lot of people don't open up to anyone. And even the more normal I get, which is far from normal, I think, but the more normal I get, the more I realize there's not many people that feel comfortable of sharing who they actually are. And I don't care how good they look. They just don't feel comfortable. And so it's like being able to choose to do recovery for yourself so that people can be in their own recovery with you. But if you don't do it for yourself, people cannot heal around you. And again, this statement, I think, is the most important statement I've ever read, is the thing that's really hard and really amazing is giving up on being yourself and begin the work of giving up on being perfect and begin the work of being yourself. I cannot be good enough to fit in any group. I cannot play it. I cannot pretend it. I cannot be a certain way, thinking that if I'm this way, you're going to be more comfortable. I can't do codependent stuff and heal. I have to just be myself. And I have to realize in doing that, some people are going to love me and some people are going to not. And that's okay. I mean, it really is okay. But recovery is worth every part of that. The one day after 15 months or so when I woke up, and I actually felt joy for the first time in years and years and years, I was trying to figure out, is it my birthday? I mean, is something happen that I just forgot? Because it felt like one day I just woke up. And that's what the brain, when it starts to fire your own dopamine and you're in your frontal lobe again, it literally is that you feel joy without a substance and without a chemical. And when that happened to me, I was like, what's up? And I remember hearing the Holy Spirit say, this is health. And I thought, oh, shut up. This is good. It's good. It's good to feel just good in your skin. Just good in your own skin. What does that mean? And I remember just thinking, this is worth fighting for. But most of us don't give it the time it needs to get a good brain health. We don't give it the 15 months. 2 or 3 months go by, and we think, if I have to feel like this my whole life, I'm not doing it, But it's not your whole life. It's about 15 months. And it really is good brain health. And to get good brain health, you know what you have to do? This is horrible. You have to drink water, lots of it. You have to get outside in the sun. You have to walk. You have to laugh. You have to, there's things that you have to do that are just normal, healthy things. One guy wrote a book about making your bed. Anybody see that? You have to get up and make your bed every day. I mean, it's just normal kind of disciplined stuff. Eat at the same time. Do those kind of things, and your brain actually gets in those patterns of producing good stuff. You start feeling good. All of that stuff happens, and one day you wake up and you're smiling. What's up? What am I smiling about? And you're smiling because you're in your own skin and you're okay with it. You're okay with it. It's just you may have experienced that in your life. I hadn't. To me, it's worth the fight. So one thing that I think about recovery is I think about literally the first thing you have to do is you have to choose to live. The second thing you have to do is you have to stop directing your own journey. In 12-step, they say you have a higher power, right? Ask God the direction. Because everything I did for 21 years was the wrong direction. I thought I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. And I needed a sponsor, or I needed God, I needed another person outside of myself to literally help direct that kind of stuff. Because I was getting every self-help book in the world. And none of those were my issue. My issue was I didn't know how to love or be loved, and I didn't know how to trust. And so restoration is possible. And it's possible for every single person. Right? Regardless of what your damage is, regardless of what your addiction is, all of that kind of stuff, restoration and healing is possible. So now, because I jumped into the church, restoration is possible for me, right? Was it? So restoration for the individual, possible. How about for the church? Possible? So literally, I don't mean to get churchy on everybody, but there are some people that have given up on even the kind of the groups that they belong to. Don't give up on them. Don't give up on me. Don't give up on the church. Restoration is a cool thing. It's possible for all of us. And as we heal, the body or the group around us heals. But if you decide to not heal and just put a mask on, everybody around you is going to have a similar mask on. That's not one of my mountains, but any questions, comments before we take off? And so what was the main point tonight? Choose to live. So main point for any of us is to choose to live. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what she said is that can you address a little bit more on accountability and 12 steps and having another person or God? For an addict, because we tend to not, regardless of where the addict is, we tend to, like I didn't tell people I didn't know how to read. I didn't tell people that I was afraid. I didn't, addicts tend to get seclusive, and our relationships are with a chemical or an event or whatever. So not with a person, right? And so coming out of that is you have to connect with someone. So for some people, God is a tough reach, right? A higher power is a tough reach. And so connect with another human being. Where I may say, you know what? I'd like you to be my sponsor, but I really don't have any problems. And she's going to do that. She's going to laugh. And she said, if I'm going to be your sponsor, you need to shut up and listen to me. Right? And I'm thinking, like, who are you? Your sponsor. So it's getting outside yourself and allowing someone during that time that my brain chemistry is trying to come back online and I'm trying to deal with all that crazy chatter in my head, is I look outside of myself to someone else. I trust you enough in your own journey that I'm going to trust her. She's going to direct me to looking at a higher power. Some people cannot do God right away because God caused a lot of damage in their life. God and the church and how they grew up and the dysfunctional religion around them caused that problem. So they have to come at it with saying that I believe there's a power outside of myself that can restore me to sanity, right? And so that's a surrender to things, to something outside of yourself. I think a true journey will always take you to God because, He's funny. I mean, He's real and He's funny. Like I'm amazed at, how old do you think God is? Like if you had to look at God and guess an age, what would you say? 15? Some people say like 80 or 1,000 or whatever. But when He created Adam and Eve, they were probably in their teens or early 20s. They sinned and aged. God didn't. So He's probably like 20 years old. He's just, when you look at Him, he's ancient of days. He's been around for a while. But I think that we even have a concept of God that I think we can challenge. How old is God? Who do you think He is? Have you ever asked God to tell you a joke? Just tell me a joke. There was a young girl in an academy, said, I don't even know if I believe in God. I have to go to 4 camp meetings every summer. I'm homeschooled. I'm in church every time the doors are open, and I hate it. And she said, you need to tell me something because I feel like I'm just losing my whole faith. And I said, well, ask God to tell you a joke. And I just heard God say that, and I thought, that's the silliest thing I ever heard, but I'll say it. And she said, what? I'm like dying here, and you tell me that God's going to tell me a joke? She wanted to cuss me out. And I thought, no, just do it. So we were meeting for the last day camp meeting the next day. She goes home. The next day they're getting ready for camp meeting. She goes to Walmart with her mom because they have to pick something up for the camp meeting. And she's bored. Her mom is shopping, and she's like, I'm so bored. So she goes over to the DVDs and she's looking through DVDs. And this little boy comes up. How old are you? He was like 6. He came up and he said, hey, do you have a quarter? And she said, what? Do you have a quarter? And so she said, did your mom tell you you can't have a quarter? And he said, yeah. And so you're asking everybody in Walmart? And he said, yeah. Said, you're going to be president someday. So anyhow, she starts laughing about that, and then she says, he stands there the whole time. She's going on and on. Why is he standing there? To get the quarter, right? And at the end of that whole thing, she says, I don't have a quarter. And he's like, I stood there this whole time, you don't even have a quarter? And he starts walking away, and she said, it was so cute. He says, oh, stop, come back here, I have a quarter. And she gives him one. Then they go to taco time or something, and they get, they're in line to get a burrito before they come back to camp meeting. And she says, I hear God say, Angela, I have quarters. And she starts laughing. But why would you give me one? She thought, because you're so cute. And she starts laughing. She comes back to camp meeting, runs across the grass to the tent that we're at, and she says, Cherie, God has quarters. And she's just crazy about that. Angela right now is in ministry, and she knows that God is real, and God talks with her and communicates with her, and her healing was very real. So sometimes you got to ask God to tell you a joke. If God can create the world, He can tell you a joke. He can show you something interesting. We approach God as if He's not approachable. And what if our higher power delights in our recovery? What if our higher power knows who we are? And so I'm not talking about church. I'm not talking about any organization. I'm talking about God. What if God says, I know how your brain is, and I know how to heal you. I know who you are more than you know who you are. And I know where you've been lied to and where you've lied to yourself. So just ask me to untwist that stuff with you. And so 12-step is going outside yourself to a higher power, admitting to yourself and to someone else that, you know what, I'm out of control. I'm afraid. I don't know how to do this anymore. And that person, as a sponsor, will direct you. I've never been able to find a sponsor. Sometimes I'm just not looking, and sometimes I think that I do sometimes make people nervous. But I'm a mess. I'm a mess like anyone else. And so sponsors are incredible to have. I have good friends. Maybe that's enough. Anybody else? Does that answer your question? Everybody can benefit by a higher power or by a sponsor, I think. Anybody else have? Yes. Say it again. Yeah. Yeah. If so, you have 15 months to heal the brain with addictions or addictive behaviors. What if you fell off a tree? And so that's an actual brain damage, and it's different than a process damage. So addiction is a process. We're taking neurochemistry and we're literally changing our neurochemistry. A trauma where you've fallen off something and you've had a car accident or a tree thing or you've been hit or whatever, those are physical damages. And so the healing time may vary. And for some of us, like I've had concussions being bucked off a horse, and I was in the hospital with a brain bleed, and that healing, I'm really prone to concussion. So I may always have that. So we're with addiction, that's a process. It's my serotonins and my melatonins and my dopamine and all that stuff, how they fire and how the brain works is different than a physical trauma. Oh, if I go back to my addiction. Yeah. Yeah. So the question was actually a good question. So if I've gone into my recovery and I go back to my addiction, whatever it is, does anybody think they know the answer to that? You are literally training your brain, just like Pavlov's dog, that this may not really mean recovery. You know what I mean? That I may actually just have to have these times where I'm clean and then I fall back and clean and fall back. So your brain actually doesn't start the healing process. So be careful with that. Those relapses, most of us relapse about 7 to 10 times, serious relapses, but your brain will heal. But it really has to feel safe even with you. One thing I learned about myself is when I looked in the mirror, I hated myself. You're not loved because you're not good enough, right? I had to get over that. I had to get over the fact that wasn't trustworthy for my brain to feel safe enough with me to actually start the healing process. And every time I relapsed, every time I got in bad relationships, and I'm talking, some of you won't even know what bad relationships look like. I can share some stories. But every time I got in one of those, that my brain got more and more distrustful to me, and that took time. So I think you have to start over again. And it's not a hardcore 15 months. You know, what they found on the scans and stuff is 15 months they can actually see things start to light up again, pleasure centers start to function again. There's a book that's really good called Thrilled to Death, and it talks about that pleasure center flatlining, and that's a really good book to read. But when things start firing again is you start getting back in your frontal lobe and you start healing. But I wouldn't say 15 months and that's just hard, like a hard line. But that's about approximately 15 months. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. What's really tough is different, like countries that, like when my favorite place to visit actually is Kenya, and the Maasai tribe is one of my favorite groups, and they hang out. I mean, they just hang out, um, and so it is. Different cultures will be closer. Latino groups, it's fun. Um, um, so I think that we do have to learn that. On Saturday afternoon, we're going to go through how to do small groups or how to do community, and we're going to put a 14-week program together so that people can learn that. But it is a process of learning. How do you connect? How do you listen? How do you, like one thing about connecting or being healthy for someone else is making sure you can listen to them. You know, I am horrible at that. I mean, I'm better than I've ever been, but to actually listen to someone when they share who they are is just as important as you sharing who you are. And so in community is setting that up, finding common interest, you know, and it may be like, I would love to crochet, and I've tried to learn, but the person that taught me smoked weed the whole time, and she was trying to teach me, and so it was a little bit tough to follow the directions. But I think that it, you know, is find a common interest. There's a group in Thailand that does a rock climbing group, and they go out rock climbing. They have a gym that they rock climb in, and then they go out rock climbing about once a quarter in some areas. And so it's usually you find common interests. Most people think about groups and small groups as Bible studies. That's part of it, but it could be anything. It could be crochet class. It could be a kayaking class. It could be a cooking class. It could be I could get my sewing machine out of the box. I could learn how to sew. So I think it is community is any time that you have a group that has a similar interest. And so you really want to be creative with that. So Saturday afternoon, we're actually going to do some training on the 14-week program that we're looking at. I wrote one because we just didn't have one, and so I just tried to put one together. So we're going to train on that. Does anybody have a group they belong to that they feel good about? And what's your group? It's a what? Bible study? Yeah. And couples or men? Okay. So it's just open. And so especially people that love, like I love to study the Bible, so those are really fun groups for some people. For some people, they're real triggering, but for some people, that's a fun group, is getting together and studying and looking at the Word of God. So it just depends. So one more question, and then we're going to close, or would you just, we can just close. Yes?
I've been going to a it's life recovery, and I don't know if I'd call it a Bible study, but churches scare me. I don't know how many years it's been since I've sat in a church.
Yeah.
So, but it's been like bringing Bible themes into practical life stuff,
Yeah.
into codependency and all this, and we actually have a lot of people coming out of NA and AA to this also.
Because they want the spiritual aspect.
And it's not so scary. And they also deal with spiritual abuse in there too. So that's been with the WIN network.
Yeah.
And they started a men's group too. And so those.
So for people that haven't heard her, she says she belongs to a group that literally is looking at spiritual issues in a spiritual way, but it's not so much a Bible study because church scares her. She had her abuse in church, and for you to be in a building is triggering. Yeah.
I'd call him a lot of Jesus talking here.
Yeah. But you know what's really cool is I'm so glad you came. I just feel like, for one, I got to connect with you, and another, even saying that out loud is important.
My assurance was that you would be real with me.
Yeah.
I knew that you'd be real with me because I've read your book and I've watched your stories
So did you guys hear that? What makes her feel safe is somebody that would be real with her. And she trusted me with that. That's an honor. I'm honored.
You're trusting us with it too.
I know, absolutely. So I just want to say thank you. So again, tonight, the most important thing is that the recovery and the healing is actually brain healing, brain health, and the first step is to choose to live.
Once again, we're very honored to have Cherie with us from Boise, Idaho, and blessing us here tonight. That's just a great privilege for our church. One of the reasons we do this tonight is not just to share information, but it's to connect. So take your time on the way out, smile at somebody, learn a name, greet somebody, and make tonight a night of connection. Let's end with prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you that we can learn these things and that Cherie can be real with us as Jesus came into this world to give us life and a future and a hope. Help us to understand and connect with you, stay close behind you. In Jesus' name, amen.
To give away, I have one. Sorry. So raise your hand if you want it. Okay. Usually, nobody raises their hand, so God bless you for that. I have another book that says to Kelly. Is there any Kellys in the room? Huh? Can I give it to you? All right. Because I signed it and it got sent back to me. I can't do anything with it.
Awesome. We'll continue tomorrow night, same time at 6:30, and through the rest of this week through Friday. God bless.